Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to a re-recording of our webinar, Building a Standout Teaching Resume, your AI strategy partner. So you might have noticed that the modern hiring process requires strategy and not just passion. So today we're going to show you how to leverage AI to strategically customize your skills and knowledge to build the standout teaching resume that you need to land an interview. So, for our key takeaways today, we'd like you to be able to leave our session knowing how to showcase your skills and knowledge, that you will have gained confidence on how to use AI tools to strengthen your resume while maintaining your personal teaching story, and that you'll leave with practical strategies for standing out in the competitive teaching job markets. So a little bit, oh, before we begin, sorry, I would like to make sure that you are able to earn a certificate for attending our webinar. So at the bottom of the screen, you can see our bit.ly link, so bit.ly/IBM Webinar 5. So on the same page where you accessed the Zoom link for this webinar, you should be able to see on the far right a blue button that says enroll. So if you can go ahead and click on that, then you should be all set to be able to earn your certificate at the conclusion of our webinar today. So a little bit about me. So my name is Katherine Atkinson. So I'm a former middle school teacher, department chair, technology coordinator, and I've been working with EdTechTeacher for a few years now, and I absolutely love it. My passion is meaningful learning with technology. So in everything that I do, I want to make sure that teachers are leaving any workshop or session that I do just knowing that technology is a tool to learning. It's not the end all be all. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to my colleague, Tom.
Thanks, Catherine. So my name is Tom Driscoll. I'm the current CEO of EdTechTeacher. I was a high school social studies teacher, digital learning director, and I'm currently also a keynote speaker and author. And my research areas are focused on, very similar to Catherine's, empowering teachers with technology in the classroom. More specifically now around AI in education, project and inquiry-based learning, and then also really my passion project is around civics education. And as far as EdTechTeacher, if you're not familiar with our organization, we've been around since 2008, helping educators in the classroom. And we primarily focus on professional development training for individuals and for schools, whether it's live on site or virtual training. And we also partner with great groups like IBMSkillsbuild to help them share information about their programs, but also to help provide training related to those types of organizations and programs. So we are happy today to be running our fifth of our fall series of IBM Skills Build webinars. We'll have another round of them in the spring, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end. We are just really happy to be here today, sharing some of these ideas with you, and we hope that you continue to engage with us in the future. Okay, so the first question, just to consider before we get into some of the strategies behind this, is to think through what is your teaching story? What are some of the things that got you to where you are today? What are some of those skills that you've developed? Some of the projects that you're really proud of? What are the successes that you've seen in the classroom for yourself and for your students? What is your story? And then think for a second, is that reflected in your resume? And I think for a lot of us, there might be some disconnect. I certainly know for mine, there are some gaps in there, right? So there's a lot that goes into your story that may not show up there. So part of the goal today is to make sure that your resume does reflect your story and what you can bring.
All right.
And yep,
All right.
Catherine.
Well, thanks, Tom, for taking the viewers through the what your teaching story does your resume reflect that. I know in thinking about my own resume and putting that together, a lot of times it's just listing different things that I've done. And so today we're going to take you through different strategies on how you can use AI to transform that into something that is going to make you stand out to anyone that happens to come across your resume. Okay, so let's now turn our attention to why use AI for resume writing. So the question is, how do we ensure that our teaching story actually gets seen? And so the truth is, passion isn't enough. Unfortunately, in today's digital job market. So, in order to be a little bit more competitive, we're suggesting that you use AI as your co-writer, your collaborator as you put together your resume. So, in this section, we're going to dive into why you should consider using AI to help you craft a powerful resume. Okay. So the biggest hurdle for a modern job applicant isn't typically the human behind the screen. It's not the principal of the hiring committee. It's typically the applicant tracking system or ATS. So that's the software that most large districts use to filter the resumes. So the problem is that the ATS screens for specific keywords from the job description. And if your resume uses synonyms or slightly different phrasing, oftentimes it just gets rejected regardless of how qualified you are. So the AI solution is that it can, if you use AI, it can instantly analyze the job description and identify the exact high value keywords such as data-driven instruction or MTSS that the ATS is programmed to look for. And this ensures that your resume is perfectly optimized to pass the digital filter and actually land on a human's desk. Okay. Now, the next thing, and this is what I mentioned before, that teachers tend to focus on their responsibilities, not their results. However, principals are really looking for, well, how are you going to make an impact if you join their team? So, as I mentioned, typical teacher resume may state something like taught seventh grade world history, managed classroom behavior, but this just describes a job. It's not really an achievement. So, the AI solution is that you can use AI to help you highlight your achievements as opposed to just listing all the different duties that you've done. So you can feed the AI a simple duty and ask it to rephrase it using strong action verbs and professional quantifiable metrics. So AI can help you transform your weak bullets into high impact statements that can attract the principal's attention. Now, the next one is every job application should have a targeted resume. But manually creating multiple versions is extremely time consuming. So for example, if you're applying for a high school biology position, but you also want to apply for a high school instructional coach position, maybe for science, those are still in the same field, but they do have different keywords and different things that you should emphasize, even though they might have some overlapping experiences that can go for both. But having to do multiple resumes, that leads to sometimes generic, ineffective resumes. So AI can actually assist you in creating a comprehensive master resume. And then with a simple prompt, it can help you tailor it to each new role that you want to apply to. So this means that you can apply for different jobs without spending hours manually tweaking the language and ensuring that the right keywords are emphasized. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Tom.
Thanks, Catherine. So every teacher, or most teachers, have to go through a hiring process at some point. And it can be a little daunting, especially if you're a new teacher, if you're transitioning in from another profession, or maybe just trying to get back into teaching. It's not easy, right? And me and Catherine have been through it, and I've done it from applying for teaching jobs and also on hiring committees as a school administrator. So I know the process that goes into this, and in this section, we're going to clarify what is some of that process, and then what are the things that you should be focused on when you're jumping into this. So the first is that almost every school or organization in education has some type of applicant tracking system at this point. People aren't just mailing in their resumes and having someone look through stacks of paper. There's some type of system that they have. So that's the first step is having some knowledge of what that system is like and how it's first used. So those are the first set of eyes. You'll submit your resume, your cover letter, you go through some type of district portal, and then that ATS will scan all of the different job descriptions and then highlight certain resumes that might come to the top that have the certain keywords, and it'll also sometimes auto reject before it ever reaches the human review. That's what we don't want. Then there's the second set of eyes. That's when human resources gets involved. It could be the principal, it could be superintendent, it could be teachers in the school. So they're going to review that resume and cover letter, and then that's when whatever group is part of that initial screener, they'll forward it on to the hiring committee, right? So that's kind of like that last phase is when you have your interview. So um, this particular webinar is going to not going to go into interview tips, but there are some great resources in IBMSkillsbuild that show you how to prepare for an interview. But to get the interview, you have to go through this two-part screening process, unless you just know somebody, which is always great. You know, networking is important, but usually you have to go through some type of screening process. Now, a couple things to consider when it comes to these screeners. The first is that it seems simple, but following the format that the company's asking for is really important. So whether it's a Word document or a PDF, So don't overlook that. Like, don't just take that same format and you just use it for everything. Think what they're asking, but then match the keywords with the job description. So, um, taking some of those things that you know that they're focusing on and starting there and at least highlighting or being cognizant of the main things they're looking for. And this is where that one generic resume is not going to work for a lot of jobs because they are very specific and they're looking for a type of candidate. Also, avoid putting in content in your headers and your footers. This seems like a small detail, but for whatever reason, when you jam information into those two parts of your document, sometimes they get overlooked or they're not seen. So, in part of that is don't be afraid of white space, right? I've seen some resumes where people are just, and there are different viewpoints on this, but they jam everything that's ever happened in their life into one page in like point 0.4 font that no one can read. And it's like, no, I kind of get it, but also keep things simple, use white space. It's good for, and it also use readable fonts. And that's something that using just like a basic Times New Roman or Arial, please know like Comic Sans in your resumes. I know some teachers love Comic Sans, I get it, but like please know. And then lastly, convert your resume to a TXT file to see if the resume is readable. And what I mean by that is you've probably seen this before where sometimes you'll download a file like that and you'll see all like gobbledygook and the formatting is all messed up. The formatting is not a problem as long as you can still see the words. The problem is like if you put images in there or if you put symbols or emojis, sometimes even that gets all messed up. So screen readers might have a hard time with that. I'm not sure. They're probably getting better at reading emojis now just because of AI, right? AI loves emojis when it writes, right? But I think that the key thing is avoiding images. And then the last tip, we don't have it on the slide here, but consider a two-column template for whatever reason. Having a two-column template in a resume tends to help with that. And really, just to reiterate, you need to get past that first filter to reach that human reviewer. So that's really the goal is how can you craft the best resume possible to put you in a position where you can talk to somebody? Because that's the goal. Once you can actually talk to that group and have that human review, that's really where you can land that position. All right, so what does this actually look like in practice? So we're going to give you a couple example prompts, and we're going to have a bunch of them throughout the rest of our session today. And feel free to take any of this and create your own modified version of it. And also feel free to use any AI tool you want. So we're using Gemini, primarily because we know that in the K to 12 space in the United States, at least, Gemini is going to be the primary tool for AI in educational institutions. However, if you'd prefer to use ChatGPT or Claude or use some of the baked in tools and things like LinkedIn, you could do that as well. But here's an example. So you are looking for a teaching job. Pull out keywords from the following job description that should be included in a resume to best get past the ATS. Now you could either paste that job description right in, or you could say this is the type of job I'm looking for, and then maybe do a deep research prompt, get some more context around it. But long story short, create that initial prompt to give you some initial suggestions on how to revise your resume to align it to those keywords. Now, here's a couple things from this example that it shared. So its response was pretty robust. It highlighted high priority keywords in bold terms from the job. It explicitly stated to, quote, make sure to list these terms exactly as they appear. And then it also included some suggestions for personalization and elaboration. It also went on to provide some more detail. So it also had some suggestions on, use the bolded keywords in there to highlight your teaching experience, some of your technology requirements, and the availability for the job. So it actually pulled out some of the things that it was looking for and it said, make sure to highlight these things as part of your resume. Now, we're not saying to make stuff up, right? Like we're saying like if these things align and they are what you do, what we're saying is those are the things you should highlight that you are going to be able to do, that you are capable and competent to do. It's pointing you towards those particular settings. And then finally, it also provides another ATS strategy tip. So it said create a core competencies or skills section on your resume that lists the most important single word keywords, right? So for instance, ELA standards, online tutoring, because this was for an online training company that this was for. So then use the longer phrases in your professional experience as bullet points to demonstrate the skill in action. And actually later on, we're going to do a little breakdown of this activity where you take kind of a competency or a skill that you have, but then you really tell the story of like how that led to impact in the classroom. But this is kind of that starting point, or what are some of those competencies or skills that you want to include and weave into your achievement focused bullet points. So we'll get into later what achievement focused actually means. All right, and Catherine's going to take us on to our second prompt. Oh,
Thanks, Tom. So just to be clear, we're not having AI look at your resume yet, right? We're starting with, well,
mm,
what's the job description? What are they asking you to have in order to even just be considered for this position itself? So as Tom mentioned, we'll later on we'll talk about we'll bring in your resume and what that looks like. But right now we're just breaking down how can AI delve deeper into those descriptions for the different job postings and how you can use AI to really filter through what it is that is most important to focus on. So this is still using the same job description for it was an online tutoring program. So a follow-up prompt might be, how can I best position myself? Now, Tom did mention LinkedIn before. So LinkedIn's AI, if I think you have to have the premium account, but it does offer AI support embedded right in there. But even if you don't have that, you can still use any AI tool to ask the follow-up question, how can I best position myself? Okay. So this is an example of some of the responses that Gemini provided. So Gemini broke down how to best position yourself for this particular job by telling you where to add I love the fact that it's a table, where to add the information, provide the strategy behind the AI suggestion. And this I really appreciated because it's actually showing you how the AI came to that particular like response. So it's telling you the reasoning behind that. Once again, highlighting the key words to use, but they put it in bold so it stands out. So it's matching the job description to what it's saying that you should probably include. And then they're also reminding you, make sure that you prove it. So it's telling you how to do that. So this is, I think, a really good follow-up into the question, well, how can I best position myself? Now, the next response is very similar. So it's providing suggestions on where and how to highlight your reliability and also technology readiness, because this was an online tutoring program. So technology access was really important. Once again, going back to the key words to include, and then also even providing some things to include in your cover letter, because we know that with most resumes or most job applications, they do want a resume, but they also ask for a cover letter. So here, Gemini is already breaking that apart for you. I didn't ask it to do that, right? Tom didn't ask it to do that. It just offered that. So this is telling you that those AI models out there, because of all the data that they're being trained on, they know that typically with a resume, there'll be a cover letter, or with a cover letter, there'll be a resume. So they're already anticipating the things that you might need. Okay. Now moving on to another more like so Gemini's providing more responses, right? So this one, another explicit reminder from the job description that they're expecting their candidates to possess 5 specific traits. So they're trying to highlight for you things to make sure that you include in your resume, provided suggestions on how to connect your qualities to the traits that this company is looking for. And then lastly, it's providing suggestions for headers in your resume. So not things that you put in the header section where the ATS is not going to read it, but how should you organize or categorize the different skills that you have. And then also, once again, including the strategy behind the AI suggestion, which I find super helpful. Okay, so now turning it back over to my colleague, Tom.
okay, so we've talked about the AI screening. Now it's the art of impactful language and moving to that human reviewer phase, right? So we got past that automated filter. Now we're turning our attention to the human reviewer, whether that's the principal, superintendent. Um, this section will address how to transform your basic duties into powerful, quantifiable proof of impact. And actually, this is something that even as we were preparing for this, a lot of aha moments, even myself, like, this would definitely help strengthen, whatever it is that you're sharing, whether it's a LinkedIn about page, resume. The impact of language is important and it does matter. So the first shift in language is moving from a list of duties to accomplishments. And the problem is that a lot of resumes, especially if you've been, say, in education for a while, or just in any career for a while, it turns into this huge list of duties and accomplishments. I still remember I was working with one professor and we asked for a resume and it was like a list of everything they've published over the last 40 years, and it was like 25 pages long, and like that's not what we asked for. Right? So this is we didn't just ask for a list of everything you've ever published. So I think that the problem is it's just a list of things we've done, and what we need to do is go to a solution and focus on what are the quantifiable and qualitative impacts that you have made in your positions, right? So it's the same thing that you've done. It's just how you frame it and how you explain it. So here are some ways that you could utilize an AI to help give you at least some starting points on how you can refine this language. So the first is a statement where you say, refine the following into a powerful statement. Include several options with quantifiable examples in brackets so it can be personalized. Taught fifth grade math and science. So to give you some context, that would be what you would have potentially put on your resume. I taught fifth grade math and science. And what we're going to do is Gemini is going to give us some examples of how do we unpack that to make it more actionable and quantifiable. Now, in these examples, we're using some data, and you may be thinking, well, what if I don't have that exact data? Before we get too far into this, just know that it can be formal quantitative data, it can be informal quantitative, it could be qualitative, it could be anything that you have that demonstrates your understanding. So think about if you've done like a personal growth goal, or if students have had goals as an educator, those are all things that you could pull in. It could be observation. So really don't get too hung up on, hey, I don't exactly have the state assessment numbers. If you do, even better. But if you don't, it's okay. It's just coming up with some type of answer. So this is one example that it used. So it said option one is to focus on student achievement. So if you have information that shows student achievement in that role, that's always going to be better. So for instance, instead of I taught math and science to fifth graders, you could say I drove significant student achievement in fifth grade math by employing, you fill in the strategy, and then you put in some of the data. So I did it by being data driven, by differentiating, and it led to this improvement in results. Another option is instead of focusing specifically on student data, perhaps you jump into curriculum and program development. So this is great if you've had those types of roles in the past. Um, so for instance, instead of saying I created a fifth grade science curriculum, you could say, well, I spearheaded the integration of it and it resulted in this, whether it's increased student engagement, increased participation, whatever it is. But again, it's you created the science curriculum and then what? You're kind of answering and I think of it this way, like you got to answer the so what on your resume. Like you taught fifth grade science. So what? Thousands and maybe millions of people have taught fifth grade. What? So what? Like what is it that you did that helps you stand out? What was the impact that you had when you taught? Okay. Um, the third is to focus on intervention and differentiation. This is great, especially if you are like a guidance counselor or a special ed teacher, or say you do like reading interventions or math interventions. It's great to show exact like some examples of how you've used that expertise to help address, for instance, in this case, learning gaps. So you could say, I did this intervention program for fifth grade math and science students, but it was for this purpose, and these were the results that we found. Then the last is a bit of a blend between the four, but just to kind of recap, all of these are options, right? So you can focus on student achievement growth. You could focus on what you've created as far as curriculum and programs. You can focus on your strategies like intervention. Like you can pick a lot of different things, but the point here is that you're also showing the impact that you had while you were doing those things. So hopefully that makes sense. Um, and then it also gave a couple different areas to personalize. So to make any of those statements shine, choose specific numbers in the areas in brackets. So this is also where you can go. It's kind of like a Mad Libs type of thing when you ask it to create these. A lot of times it'll spit out like insert your stuff here, right? So it creates nice templates for you. But this is where you can do student growth, you do scale, like how many students. That matters, right? So if you taught 12 students versus 150, that means something, right? Like if you had a big workload, that shows that you can manage 150 students in one class. So I think that it's important to show your scale. And then also, if you can show like efficiencies or processes, I know this is not as high of a priority, but if you can show school districts that you can work collaboratively with a team and on committees and in groups and do it efficiently, that is a huge value add. So I think adding that is also very helpful. All right, so now I'm going to kick it to Catherine to show you another variation of how to use AI for this type of process.
All right, thanks, Tom. So now that we looked at the power of impact using some type of quantifiable or qualifiable term or phrase, now we're going to turn to, well, how can we make sure that we write it perfectly every time? So to be clear, the STAR method is not something we created. It's been around for a while, but you can use AI and you can even ask it, use the STAR method and help me write out these things. So it is a step-by-step process. And AI will be able to highlight all these different things that you should include as a line to the STAR method. So the STAR method uses four cues. So situation, which is to set the stage, give the necessary details. The task is to describe your role and responsibility, which typically is what teachers would put on their resume. The action is to explain the steps. So what did you do in that particular role? And then share, the R is the share the outcomes, the so what, right? Kind of thing. All right, so that's a little bit about what the STAR method is. So now let's go ahead and look at some example prompts. So this is what we put into Gemini, and then this is actually, sorry, this is what you would put into Gemini. So I'm a teacher. I want to rewrite this resume bullet to sound more impactful and professional. So giving the AI direction. And in a previous webinars, we've talked a lot about what you put in, your input does determine the output. We also have a whole nother webinar on prompt writing to really break it down. But the way that you phrase your prompt, that's going to determine, well, what is AI going to suggest to you? So notice in quotes, it says taught math and science to fifth graders, but then the prompt is please rewrite it using the STAR method and include specific quantifiable outcomes. Suggest three different versions. And I always think this is a good thing to throw in there because AI, I mean, it's already going to be generating this stuff anyway. Just ask it to give you a few different options so that you can choose from it. Okay, so Gemini response number one focused on student achievement. Notice that that the STAR method is actually in parentheses. So AI is showing you where they've actually put in those things that you asked it to highlight. Okay. And then you do have bolded keywords, and then there's actually even brackets in there so you can fill in the appropriate assessment or the appropriate whatever you want to put in there to personalize it based upon your current experience. Okay. Now, option number two is focusing on curriculum and program development. So once again, the STAR method is labeled. They have the bolded keywords, and then also, oh yeah, there's actually brackets in there. Now, I do want to point out, Tom mentioned, some putting in the data, sometimes that might be hard to figure out, right? Because as teachers, we're not looking at saying, oh, 85% of my students are engaged. But for those of you that have been in the classroom, or if you're a student teacher, you have access to your grade book, right? So you can almost do like a pre-post. You can see like over time, are you seeing higher engagement by using a particular strategy? So you can actually change that anecdotal piece into something that's quantifiable and put that in your resume. Okay. All right. So the third response, because we asked Gemini to generate a couple different options, is focusing on intervention and closing the achievement gap. So this one's actually a huge one, comes up in a lot of our workshops is how do we close that gap, right? So asking the AI tool to label these options, once again, highlighting how it aligns to the STAR method. And then I mean, granted, these are kind of long, right? Because in resumes, you do want to be short and sweet. So don't be afraid to just tell the AI, I need you to make it concise without losing impact. I mean, I use that phrase a lot because AI can go on and on and on. Like some people could talk forever. AI can do the same thing. So give it the parameters. Say, I need it to be maybe no more than 10 words, and I need you to start with a really strong verb. So you are the one that's directing the response that AI is going to be providing. All right. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next section. Turn it back over to Tom.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more about character traits. And I think that it's very important to include those on your resume. And a lot of schools are looking for that because it is so important. But sometimes if you just put a list of personality traits, it's not really going to hit home. So what this section will do is how you can take a character trait and translate it into more of a specific skill that you've implemented with some action-oriented statements around it. So like you took this trait in this competency, right? But what did you actually do with it? Like if you're creative, okay, what did you do that was creative? So I think it's trying to bridge that gap between the two. So a couple examples here would be a trait is I am patient and calm under pressure. Anyone who has ever worked in schools knows that you have to have this And if you don't, you probably shouldn't be working around children, right? Because you have to be patient and calm under pressure. So that's really important. The skill is, for instance, I maintained a common structured learning environment during transitions. It reduced student disruptions by 30% and improved instructional time. Now, you don't have to put all of that in there, but can you see how it went from a trait of I'm calm under pressure to this is how I demonstrated the value of being calm under pressure in one of my work environments. Another example is creativity. I think creativity and innovation are some of the most important skills we can have. But what does that mean? How can you demonstrate that? So if you kind of reframe it as a skill, now it's like, okay, I've designed and implemented an innovative makerspace. And like a lot of other schools that build a makerspace, okay, now what? Well, what I did is I helped integrate the science curriculum and it resulted into a 25% increase in engagement when we did more project-based learning, whatever it might be. And honestly, in this particular scenario, if you can show what you did with the makerspace, that's going to put you ahead of most people because a lot of people built these things and didn't even do anything with them. So, anyway, that's an aside. But I think if you can really demonstrate how you can be creative and innovative, that's going to go a long, long way. Okay, next one, and this is huge right now in a lot of aspects of life, not just in teaching, but empathy, right? So being empathetic is really important. Being compassionate is important. So what does that skill actually look like? So you could say, use your empathy to cultivate a classroom culture of trust. Maybe it led to more collaboration. Maybe it reduced behavioral incidents. So that would be more of a cultural piece, but showing, all right, because I am empathetic and it led to a classroom culture of XYZ, and then you explain what that led to. Some folks also like to show like anecdotal stories. The only problem is with a resume, your space is limited, so you really can't go into big narratives. But if you can at least translate it from a trait like empathy to a skill, I use my empathy to create a great classroom culture, that will help you stand out. And then the last piece is you may not be coming from a traditional teaching position, right? Or maybe you're just coming right out of school, right out of college. And I think one of the frustrations I had when I first came out is I shared this story before on this topic. The first couple jobs I interviewed, I got all the way to the final round, and I didn't get the job because I had never taught before. They're like, we're not hiring anyone inexperienced. And I get how frustrating that can sound, but that's not a barrier to getting a job. I even remember even way back then, they were their advice to me at the time, because I was kind of frustrated, was like, well, take your other experiences that you've been a part of and show how that can translate into success in this job. So if you're coming from another business or another industry, or you're just getting started, think about a trait that you have in that other experience and then translate it to what it might look like. So the AI prompt could be, I have strong leadership skills in my role as a team lead at fill in the blank business. How can I phrase this experience on my resume to show a principal or whoever your ratings for that I have strong classroom management skills, right? So you could even kind of tinker with it and say, all right, these are the things I did in this role, in this position. What are the best ways that those skills translate to this type of job? And just kind of work with it and see what types of things emerge and then craft it as your own, obviously. But the whole point is that thinking through what are um, those traits that you have coming from other industry or coming from right from college, and how you can apply that into the resume. All right. So now we're going to kick it to Catherine to go from your story to your resume.
All right, thanks, Tom. Before I jump into this section, though, I just wanted to point out that Tom was highlighting the traits and highlighting how that could be rewritten into a skill. That's actually what you could use AI for. I mean, you could on your own think of it, right? But I mean, AI, you can just say,
Yeah.
I am an empathetic person. What are some ways that I could possibly say this that might shine, or stand out, right? But this also goes back to the job description. So what are they looking for? So you could even say,
Mm.
I'm a really creative person. How can help me connect it to whatever is in the job description? So yes, you can obviously think of it on your own, but the whole point is AI can actually help get you through that a lot quicker. All right,
Mhm.
so let's go ahead and move on to taking your story, your unique story, and some of the strategies that we've just shared, and let's talk about how to transform those simple traits into impactful language. So we're now going to turn our attention to using AI as your co-author to master your whole resume and how to keep up with it and things like that. Okay, so the first thing I do want to highlight is the idea is you need to have a master resume. I mean, I have because I've been I've been teaching for a long time, so I have resumes that are actually on hard copy, right? But now you can do everything digital. So our suggestion is create a master resume, a document that includes every single accomplishment, certification, and skill that you've ever done. Keep track of all the PDs that you go to, the workshops that you attend, the ones that you actually facilitate or host or design, and keep it updated. Don't wait until right before you want to switch positions or get a promotion because you won't remember all the things that you've done. So just create a master resume, keep it updated. You could use a Google Doc or a Word file and keep everything in there. And then when it comes time to now helping AI, well, actually asking AI to help craft your resume for you, you can actually upload that master resume into AI and then give it the job description, say, hey, help me match up what this job is asking me with what I actually have experience for. But if you have that master resume and you keep it updated, it's gonna just be a lot easier for you moving forward. Okay. All right. So the next thing is to use AI as your co-author. Okay. So AI is not here to replace your voice. It's actually here to empower it. Okay. So we've talked about the importance of creating a master resume, but the real magic lies behind making it really personal. So AI can serve as your co-author and it can polish the language. And I use AI for that a lot. Polish the language and instantly adapt the tone so your authentic teaching story stands out. Now, over time, because I tend to use two different AI tools pretty regularly, one of them I feel like really has a good idea of my voice. So when I ask it to write a paragraph for me or sum up something, I can see myself actually saying that. So you can actually train the AI in being able to do that for you because you don't want to sound like a robot, right? You want to stand out. You want your personality to stand out because the principal is not just hiring you on based on what you can bring, but also you're fit to their culture, right? So by asking AI to help you polish it and bring out your story, your voice, that's the next best step. Okay. All right. So you can frame the AI as a writing assistant. So it can obviously help update or revise your resume. So you can obviously keep it in an AI tool. I actually have mine separately, but I can upload it whenever I want if I'm applying for a particular project. Obviously help AI identify keywords in a job description. We talked about that at length. It can expand on a bullet point, right? You can ask it to do that, or you can ask it to make it more concise. AI can also check your formatting, and I really appreciate that because that you can get lost in the weeds with that one, right? But if you're not the best speller or anything like that, that's another great thing about AI. It can do that for you. You can even ask AI to review for grammar and tone, which I've talked about, and then also to personalize your story. So you can ask it strengths and weaknesses, what are some suggestions for improvement? And then based upon what the AI provides, you can pick and choose the different things that you would like to redo or revise in your resume. Okay. All right. Now, talking a little bit about what gems are. So in Gemini, there's gems in there that you can use to help you with a variety of different responsibilities and tasks you have. They actually have one called a career guide. So you can make your own gem if you'd like, or you
Mm.
can use ones that are already embedded in there. So a gem is actually just a customized version of Gemini that you can personalize. I think they're found, I'm not, I think, I know, they're found in a bunch of other AI tools. So in Claude, I think it's called Projects, and Tom can confirm that if it's still called that. And then in
Mm.
Chat GPT, it's actually just called a GPT. So a generative pre-trained transformer. So that's a whole nother mouthful. But you can
Mm.
actually create your own and make it work for you. So it can really just be personalized. It could be your own career coach instead of a career guide. It could help you with interviewing, things like that. So you can make these and personalize it. You just, unfortunately, it is a little time consuming in the beginning, but once you make it, you can just keep reusing it, right? Because you can just go back to it and update it as needed. right? So we just want to leave you with this thought that you can leverage or probably want to think about leveraging the AI to manage the technical details so that you can focus your energy on showcasing your teaching impact and personal story, right? Let AI take care of the mundane stuff, and then that way you can spend more time on the creative side, making yourself shine. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Tom for our next section.
All right, I'm going to bring us home with this final topic, and it's on the power of human connection. For those of you who are still watching, thank you. I know you've been here for a while. We appreciate you, and hopefully it's been helpful. And this part is focusing more on the idea of a resume being a tool to open the door, right? So it's not going to get you the job. The resume won't land the job for you, but it's a tool to start having the conversations with decision makers who matter. So think of it as a conversation starter. So you can kind of keep updating this and revising it, but at the end of the day, it's a tool. So thinking through um, how can you leverage this so that it will entice people to have the conversation with you, right? So that's kind of what Catherine was mentioning is like, where's the story in this? Do you fit into their culture? So if you can put some of that into the resume to lead in to those conversations, that's where a lot of the magic happens. The other thing to think about is how you can leverage some of these tools, a lot of them AI tools, to help build your own set of relationships and networks with others. And I don't mean AI as in just crafting messages for them. I actually would say don't do that. It's more about how can you find the people that you want to have a seat at the table with? How can you learn from them? How can you connect with them and build up your network? There's that saying, it's not so much about what you know, but about who you know. In many ways, that's true. So utilize not just like job boards and things like that, but use professional networks, trade organizations. There's a lot of them in the education space. Jump in and try to be active in those, and that's definitely going to help you get some of these positions. So, a couple actionable steps is the first is don't try to go out cold calling everybody and just trying to make connections. Start with your existing ones. And even if you haven't had a full-time job yet, if you're just coming out of school, you could reach out to former mentor teachers, university professors. If you have come from other industries, reach out to your colleagues. And then you could also attend school and district events. So, for instance, if they have, curriculum nights at certain places, or if they have conferences, go to those and try to make some connections. We'll actually talk about that in a little bit, actually with the next one. So connecting directly with educators, right? So that's important. And the best place to connect with educators if you're not in a school district is at a conference or an event. So you can go anything from a one-day workshop to going to like the ISTE conference, which is this massive conference every year for like 4 days. So it doesn't have to be that big though. There are so many local events, many of which we're going to be running through IBMSkillsbuild. So keep an eye out for those. But I think the point is try to reach out and find as many connect educators that you connect with as possible. And then target your outreach messaging. So, for instance, if you are using AI as a tool, again, I wouldn't say to automate and crank out all of your messages. Like, I honestly think, sending 1,000 cold emails out with one click of the button, that's never going to work, right? It's just not. But if you wanted to use AI to maybe craft a more personalized, non-generic message that you could send to somebody, that could be helpful. Don't get too cute with it though, because there are some, I get a lot of people reaching out now, and I know that they did this. Like they just basically took my LinkedIn page and crafted a couple prompts and they pretend they know me. Don't go overboard with it, right? But I think you can use it as a tool to start crafting that message. And I think not so much about what you're saying, but who you should say it to. I actually think using AI as a tool to get more information about what is a school district's philosophy, what's approach, what's something that they've actually accomplished recently that I can build upon. I think that goes a long way. One that will help is profile optimization. This is one I was mentioning to Catherine last week. I should probably do myself. But also think about your online presence. And I know social media is a mess right now, but there are still places that it helps to help network. So whether it's LinkedIn or a professional website or some other place, how can you use some of these strategies to optimize your profile? So whether it's an about page, a LinkedIn, like I mentioned, using some of this to help craft that as well. So how you craft your resume also start to craft your online profile. If you have like an about page on your website, you could use the same strategies there, depending on the audience that you want to reach out to. And then the last one is research and interview prep. I think this is a highly underutilized use of AI in general. Use it to role play, use it to engage in a simulation, and in this case, use it to prep for an interview, right? So if you know who you have an interview coming up with, you could easily come up with some sample questions and run through it with an AI tool, assuming the role of that person that you're going to be interviewing with. And not only does it give you practice, but it might give you some insights on things to bring up. And you can even align the both. You say, hey, here's the job description. Here's what they are looking for. Create 5 questions based on that job description, and let's run through a simulation. Anybody that's watching this right now could do this like in 5 minutes. All right. So it's not terribly hard to do. I just think people don't really think about it yet. But using AI as a kind of conversation practice, I think is a great way to get prepared for some of these types of conversations. All right, Catherine, bring us home.
All right. Well, actually wanted to piggyback on one more thing that
Oh,
you were
sure.
saying. So
Yep.
using AI for interview prep, I mean, that to me is a great tool. And besides just putting in the job description and having AI suggest some questions, I just also want to point out that there's a lot of AI tools today that actually have audio like
Mm,
embedded in it. So it's not like you have to type out the prompt. You can just actually say the prompt, and then AI will then be able to
yeah.
engage in the conversation with you. So for those of you that are thinking, I type so slow or what, yeah, it just use the audio voice.
Yeah.
Because I tried it the other day. It was
Yeah.
remarkably accurate for someone that speaks really fast and doesn't enunciate. So, so
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
you
And
go.
Catherine, they all have live mode. Like Gemini has Gemini Live. I think every Android phone has Gemini Live built into it now.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it's like, and I think what Catherine's saying too is like, it's not just speech to text, it's the actual voice mode. Because if you go
Hmm.
back and forth through the interview in voice mode, you'll get the transcript once you're done. But here's one tip. I didn't realize this, but when you transition to full voice mode, where there's no, it's all full voice, I think some of the models actually shift to like their lightweight models.
Hmm.
So just know if you switch to voice mode, you're not going to be using like the deep research models. It'll just be more of that quick back and forth. So just again, you don't need to get too into the weeds, but just know like if you want to get really deep into it, just use the text base or the speech to text. If you want to have more of a conversational interview practice, just go into voice mode and then give it a whirl. Good idea though, Catherine.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no, all good suggestions, Tom. I appreciate that. All right, so we're gonna now start wrapping up our session. So we've covered the strategies, the tools, and some of the language needed to create a standout resume. So now we're going to take some time to not reflect on what we've learned and then share a few next steps. So by now, we do hope that you know how to showcase your skills and knowledge with using AI to help you with your resume. We hope that now you feel more confident on how to use AI tools to strengthen your resume while also maintaining your personal teaching story. And we hope that you are leaving us today with some practical strategies for standing out in the competitive teaching job markets. All right, so we do want to throw out a reflection question to you, and Tom and I are fans of the visible thinking routine. So this is the I used to think, now I think. So the statement is reflecting on what we discussed today. So thinking about what you learned today and how your perspective of using AI to assist you in your job search has changed. So before this webinar, I used to think what? Now I think. So I'm just taking a moment to reflect on that. All right. And then now that you've gotten towards the end of our webinar here, in order to earn your certificate, we do ask that you go to IBMSkillsbuild and click on today's webinar. And once again, the bit.ly link is down at the bottom. So it's bit.ly/IBM webinar 5. And then just click Mark Complete. Then you do have to click submit. And then under actions, you can actually view or download your digital certificate if you want to submit that to your district for professional learning hours. And IBMSkillsbuild does keep track of all of your learning activities. So if you've been watching our other webinars and you haven't downloaded your certificate, you can just still go back to those and it'll be available for you.
Yes,
And
I'm sorry. Let me reiterate that anyone who's watching this now, anything in our webinar series that you've watched or reviewed, um, please go in and mark that complete and download that certificate because if you have it, and then also it just helps the folks know that this is impactful and it's reaching people. So we really do appreciate if you could do that. One, it helps you, and it will also help show some of the awareness around the program. So we appreciate you doing that.
Definitely. And then lastly, we would love to have your feedback. We do have two more webinars that we're going to be hosting to close out the 2025 year. And then in 2020, we're going to run some more. So if you have a moment, we would love for you to provide some feedback on our webinars. I know it helps me personally become just a better facilitator and trainer. So the link is on the screen there. So bit.ly/AI webinar survey 2025. Right. Tom, back to you.
And speaking of our next webinar, it is coming up on December 4th. We almost have a back-to-backer. It's December 4th and 8th. We're going to have Unpacking Generative AI Fundamentals, Part 1 and 2. Part 1 is natural language and vision processing. Part 2 is machine and deep learning, right? Yep. So we're going to get a little bit into the weeds there, but still designed for educators, but a deeper dive into some of the mechanics of how AI works and what that means for teachers. We're also planning on having some special guests that are AI experts in the field to help provide some further insights for us on where AI is going and how this impacts the education space. So we really hope to see you on December 4th. You can sign up for this and any one of our other webinars at edtechteacher.org/skills. We're going to keep that website the same for as long as we can just to keep it simple. So anytime you want to sign up for an upcoming session, go there. The other thing is if you think your school, district, or organization, it doesn't even have to be a school, if your organization or network is interested in having us either run these workshops for you, or if someone on your team would like to run them, or even do live workshops with us on other AI topics related to this, it is going to be at zero cost. So feel free to reach out to us. We have an amazing team, Catherine being one of them, who just knocks it out of the park. And we are happy to work with schools. And again, this isn't like a bait and switch or anything. This is free. There's no funding involved. It's anybody who wants to be in part of this project. And also, we are finalizing a brand new, hot off the presses, full certification program for AI for teachers based on the UNESCO competency framework. That is going to be available very soon. And actually, if you're watching this archive, it's probably already available. So reach out to us there. We can also offer that full 10-hour training program for anyone in your school or district, virtual or on site for free. So again, the whole point of this program is to help educators across the world make sense of AI technologies and become more empowered in the classroom. So any way we can do that, feel free to reach out. We are happy to do so. All right, so that concludes our final webinar. I just want to thank Catherine again, my trusted colleague who does such an amazing job, and we hope to see you back here next time. Thanks, everyone.